Looks like we're good to go.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and call the meeting to order, and I'm stepping in for Tom today at chairing the meeting, even though he's present virtually. He's feeling a little under the weather, so since I'm here in person, I'll go ahead and chair the meeting. And with that, we'll go ahead and do roll call vote, please. I'm sorry, roll call.
Veranda.
Here.
Castroville.
Here.
County of Monterey.
Here.
Del Rey Oaks.
Here.
Marina.
Here.
Monterey.
Here.
Pacific Grove.
Here.
Salinas. Here. Sand City. Seaside.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Perfect. And with that, I'll ask Mayor Oglesby to kick us off with the Pledge of Allegiance here.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, moving on to number 4 on the agenda. Are there any additions to the agenda?
Vice President Williamson, can you just have President Moore make his announcement relative to the Brown Act, that if anyone in the room is over the age of 21 before we proceed?
Chair Moore, would you like to share with us your
Absolutely. There is no one else in this room and no one else under the age of 18 in the house.
Beautiful. Thank you for that. Are there any additions to the agenda? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to the approval of the agenda. Entertain a motion. Move approval.
Second.
All right, do we need to take this to the public? We need to go to the public.
We don't
first,
have to go public.
then? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. We'll move on to number 6, public comments. We'll move out to the public. If anybody wishes to speak for items not on this evening's agenda, go ahead and you have your 3 minutes.
We do have Christopher Bunn. Like to make a comment? Mr. Bunn?
Yeah, thank you very much. Christopher Bunn, President of the Salinas Basin Water Alliance. Not sure if I should talk now or if you allow comments on consent agenda items. Should I wait till then?
For items on the consent agenda, you'll have to wait until the consent.
Okay, I'll wait.
Is there anybody else that wants to speak during public comment?
I have Susan Scavone. Go ahead, Ms. Scavone.
Good evening. Thank you very much. I just had a question because there had been discussion about the Board of Supervisors voting to allow people to make tax payments other than twice a year. And since the M1 fee is planned to be rolled into those payments, has there been any decision made yet in regard to that you know of? So that was my question. Thank you.
All right, anybody else for public comment? With that, we'll close public comment. And Ms. Scavone, I recommend reaching out to city, to staff, M1W staff to get some maybe follow up on your questions there. All right, with that, we'll go to number 7, presentations. Regional progress on stormwater capture and reuse. I'll pass it to Paul.
Thank you, Tyler. So many of you may know, the Monterey Regional Stormwater Program is, well, a grouping of all the cities, and the program manager, Jeff Condit, who will be doing the presentation today, actually sits in Monterey One Water's offices, gets his paycheck through us, but reports to that stormwater committee. Obviously, we try to work as closely as we can because we think stormwater is one of those options for source waters for recycling. And we're just happy that Jeff is here and can tell us a little bit about the stormwater and capture and use projects that we've been trying to embark upon and getting some traction on, actually.
Thank you, Paul. And and good evening, Monterey One Water Board of Directors. As Paul mentioned, I'm Jeff Condit. I'm the program manager for the Monterey Regional Stormwater Management Program. We're a collaboration of 7 jurisdictions on the Monterey Peninsula. That includes the County of Monterey, City of Delray Oaks, City of Monterey, Pacific Grove, Sand City, Seaside, and then also Carmel by the Sea. And we work together. Basically, we're implementing the Clean Water Act requirements. There's a really, as you all know, pretty rigorous stormwater permit, the Phase 2 NPDES permit. And we work collaboratively here based at Monterey One Water. We meet the 4th Wednesday of the month, every month at 9:30 a.m. in our admin conference room. And it's been a real privilege and honor to work with all the cities in the county to solve some of these challenges. The stormwater permit is a bit complex, and it's been really great to just have this unity among the peninsula jurisdictions. So one area of focus is looking at stormwater as a resource. And as you all know, with Pure Water Monterey, we're always looking for additional source waters. Stormwater is a key component to the source waters. And we've been getting some traction, as Paul mentioned. Next slide. So as you may know, there are existing Monterey One Water stormwater capture and use projects that have been implemented. With regard to Pure Water Monterey, a big portion of that was the city of Salinas. We developed those ponds that's feeding into the Pure Water Monterey project. Also, we've been working closely with the city of Pacific Grove. They have some urban diversion projects within the city jurisdiction where we are diverting dry weather flows into the sanitary sewer during the dry season. And then also they recently completed what's called an ASBS project, areas of special biological significance, where they are capturing water over at the golf course in those large tanks, and then slowly bleeding that into the sanitary sewer system and ultimately Pure Water Monterey. And as you may recall, back in 2016, there was a Senate Bill SB 895, and this basically required jurisdictions that were seeking earwimp funds, the Integrated Regional Water Management Program funds, to develop a stormwater resource plan to be eligible for future funding. Basically, what came down to was the state was feeling that we weren't necessarily putting enough attention on stormwater as a resource as a state, so they made a requirement to incorporate that into the earwimp process. The Monterey One Water Board gave us permission to pursue a Prop 1 planning grant, which we were successful in obtaining. It was a $360,000 grant from the state of California Prop 1 funds. We developed an RFP process, and we hired geosyntech consultants out of the Bay Area. They had done a number of stormwater resource plans throughout the state. So we finalized that plan in 2020. And so thank you, Monterey One Water Board, for allowing us to pursue that initiative. And then through the plan, basically it was a large plan where we're looking at opportunities for stormwater capture. We found it to be a real our consultants found it to be a bit of a challenge on the peninsula. We're relatively built out. Storage capacity is a challenge. Where can we locate large infrastructure where we can store water and bleed it into our system during the dry months? During the wet season, it can be challenging feeding that water into our system because we get so much water all at once. So looking for ways to store the stormwater and then get it into our system when feasible. So one key takeaway, the lakes were an interesting solution that we found. So that was something that came out of this process. We have had some success. Basically, the top 6 projects that were identified, we developed a 10% concept design for those projects. And we basically wanted to kind of flush out those projects a little and have a document that we could show to potential funders, say, look, we have a project ready to go. Though it was only 10% concept design, we were able to really spell out the projects, do some initial engineering tasks, and then present that to funders. So we were successful in City of Seaside. We were able to implement the Del Monte Manor bioretention facility. This was a housing development that was seeing flooding infecting residents. So there's a large biofiltration facility that was built. And this is not going into the Monterey One Water system, but it's going right into the groundwater aquifer. and that's being cleaned with green infrastructure. Really great. It just came online. I recommend a visit, and I'm happy to work with City of Seaside if anyone's interested in checking that out. Recently, and what was the impetus for this presentation today, there's been some local media coverage of the city of Monterey. They recently accepted funding from the state of California to help us go pursue the Lake El Estero urban diversion project. It was recently written up in some of our local periodicals or papers, and we work closely with Tricia Wotan over there, the environmental regulations manager of City of Seaside. Mark Stone, our former assemblyman, was able to include a budget line item to fund $1 million to implement this project. So we're really thankful to Mr. Stone and the state of California for that project. So it's recently funded, and City of Monterey is currently pursuing that project. Again, having that 10% concept design was really effective in soliciting funds. In the next City of Monterey also, we developed a 10% concept design for the Olivier Street urban diversion. Basically, this is a tunnel project. The water comes down from the Presidio of Monterey, goes under the tunnel, and that's currently being sent to the bay. So it's an opportunity to capture that water. It's already in a pipe and feed it into our system. So we were able to receive partial funding from the IRWIM, the Integrated Regional Water Management Program, and we're seeking additional funds currently. But we're really thankful to the IRWIM program for those funds. That's all I have to say. So thank you, Monterey Water Board. If anyone has any questions, I'm happy to answer.
All right, are there any questions?
So the California state money, the grant money that you receive for Lake El Estero, is that just a one-time thing, or do you see that happening down the road? Are there other opportunities?
Great question. Last year, the budget, the California state budget had surplus funds. So they were able to identify, Mark Stone was able to identify that funding and get it into the state budget. This year, wasn't the same picture. They had a budget deficit, unfortunately. So that we don't see it happening this year, but in the future, definitely a possibility, depending on the state funds. So great model to pursue those funds. So we should work with our assembly members for future opportunities. And having that 10% concept design was really effective and say, here's a project, we can go forward. And that really sealed the deal.
All right, thank you.
See Chair Moore's hand.
Yes, thank you very much. I realize this question is a little tough to answer with any level of accuracy, but what were the estimated amounts of potential acre feet per year capture from each of these projects?
That is a great question. And unfortunately, I don't have the concept designs with me. They were significant, not very sizable. I'm happy to forward you those concept designs to really spell out. I can send that to the whole board with the estimated capture. Right now I'm kind of blanking. I apologize. But yeah, it was a relatively number of acre feet for Lake El Estero, especially potentially. The Olivier Street was a little smaller capture, but yes, I'm happy to forward you those concept designs, and that spells it out exactly how much water they're estimating. So sorry about that.
Thank you very much.
Jeff,
Yeah, thank you, Chair. The Pacific Grove project, and I guess, other projects that are going to be diverting stormwater and then take it to the plant. Do you meter output from the PG project?
So Jared, why don't you come on up there? So I don't believe so. We do have the ability to shut it off when we need to, but we don't have a meter on there yet. Is that true? Because we're doing 2 or 3 stations. When we meter, when we don't. Okay. So we do accept flow from PG into 2 of the pump stations out there. One of them is metered, one is not.
Okay. But the plan is, or the expectation would be to meter what the benefit really is. I would assume. Okay, great. Thank you.
That's the plan. Yes.
And there's a couple different reasons for it. One is also from a billing perspective, because there's a charge for treating that water as it goes through our plant to the end user.
That's a good reason to meter it as well.
Not the one that you were looking for, but thanks, Jeff, for the presentation and the work behind this. This is good stuff and a big part of what we do. You had mentioned an issue with storage, and I can see how that's an issue, particularly along the coast. But there's tons of land in Fort Ord, so I'm not sure how much that has been considered in regards to the studies that have been done.
Very good thought. Yes, we are exploring that as well. That's more, it's a bit upstream is a challenge. Unfortunately, you know, down on the coast at the downstream is where you can really capture all that water. And that we're on a granite peninsula. So it's difficult to dig into the granite and put below ground facilities we found. But yes, we are definitely looking at Fort Ord as possible solution going forward.
Okay, and then the slide that you had showed the 3 projects that showed some movement forward on had identified that there were 6 projects that had that 10% design done. What were those 3 other projects?
Okay, we had one for City of Pacific Grove, another one. This was a kind of a big pie in the sky picture. David Avenue Reservoir up top there as a potential project.
Is that the Cal-Am site?
The Cal-Am site, yes. And I worked with the former environmental regulations manager. We met with Cal-Am and they were open to looking at that site for potential storage. The cost per acre feet for that project was a bit challenging. You'd have to build a reservoir up there that would be dammed, and so it wouldn't flood the neighboring homes. But it was a unique project. It was recreational opportunities there, so we really like that project. But whether it's feasible is a bit of a challenge. We found we did explore it with a 10% concept design. It was a good process. And it's still on as a potential project. The other projects are one in Carmel by the Sea, who's not a member of the Monterey Water Board, but they're on the Mr. Swim program. There is they are also regulated by the areas of special biological significance. So they're trying to divert some of their flows to cod there. So that was the other one. And then the last one, I'm thinking right now. I should know this.
I feel like Allison might have it.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, thank you, Allison. Yes, and then we looked at seaside dry well infiltration. So trying to capture water and then directly discharge that into the groundwater aquifer. And so the regional board really pushed us to pursue that as a potential project. They were very interested in that.
Hey, where's that water coming from?
Throughout the city of Seaside, and then we divert it, and then it would be injected into the groundwater aquifer.
Okay, perfect. All right. I think that's it. Thank you, Jeff, again for your presentation.
Thank you.
All right, with that, we will go to item number 8, which is the consent agenda. Does anybody on the board wish to pull anything?
I don't want to pull for a vote. I just really want to pull for a comment.
Sure, absolutely.
And I would just say 8U.
Yeah, absolutely. Why don't we see if anything's going to be pulled and then we come back and do comments. Let's go to the,
Okay,
okay, you want to pull K?
Yep.
Okay, so we'll pull K
for comment, sorry, I should
just for
clarify.
comment. Okay, so U and K, we'll come back for those. Let's go online. Does anybody in the public wish to pull any item on the consent agenda? I see Mr. Bunn's hands up. Oh, and if you just want to make a comment, this is a good time for public comment too, so we can go ahead and do that.
Ron?
Thank you. Yeah, Christopher Bunn, President of the Salinas Basin Water Alliance. You have quite a few items related to the expansion, notably K on the consent agenda. And I would just urge you as you're moving forward with this, that you always keep in mind your neighbors with this project, namely the Salinas Valley and the Valley Groundwater Basin and CSIP and the Groundwater Sustainability Agency. There's multiple neighbors here that you are potentially going to affect. And there's a lot of things at play for us here in the Valley. And one of those things, of course, is the Ag Order 4.0 and the potential restrictions and requirements that puts on growers and how that might affect the source waters that you folks are looking at. And also, I would urge you to keep in mind the potential effects on CSIP. It's interesting looking at CSIP numbers for last year. Last year, that was the first year in the entire history of CSIP where we used more water from our wells as opposed to effluent water. The first time. SRDF obviously wasn't running, and we've had years in the past where SRDF has not been running, and we haven't had that strange imbalance where we've been pumping our groundwater more. And that's exactly what we're trying to avoid in CSIP. So again, just to sum up, please keep in mind the effect that this project might have on your neighbors. There's always this danger of a silo effect in politics and with agencies. And I would urge you to don't think in a silo with this project. Anyways, thank you for your time.
Now we'll go to John Tilley. Mr. Tilley?
Thank you. John Tilley, various organizations, live in the peninsula, work in Salinas, really care about the county at large. And likewise encouraging you to make sure that as the peninsula goes to solve its water problems, it relies upon the peninsula to do so. That source waters, as for years, have been a grave concern for me. They're incredibly important for the input to expanding Pure Water Monterey. And for years, I've questioned the tables that are in the SEIR and whether those source waters are indeed available to the expansion of the project. And for years, again, I've said Pure Water Monterey is a great project. Expanding it's a fine idea, but the scope of the project needs to be scoped to the source waters. There's no point in borrowing a lot of money to build a project for which you don't have the sufficient amount of water to support that size of a project. So as this consideration of expanding goes forward, put a keen eye financially for every source of reasons on the source water to make sure that as the project is being built, that the water is available to make the project successful. It's going to be very expensive, and if we're going to pay that much for something, let's get our money's worth. Thank you very much.
Okay, we'll close public comment and we'll look at item U for comment.
Yeah, actually, I pulled it up just because of the prices on, and it was addressing some of the, the ditches and the drain and all. I actually, my comment, kind of a follow-up from what's already been mentioned here about Ag Order 4.0, which I've been aware of for some time. I'm kind of on the periphery of agriculture and Christmas trees. So I've seen this for some time come to me in forms of some emails from the state. My concern with this is as it stands now, the order is going to force those who are in ag in the valley not to put the water into the ditch unless it's already been cleaned. And I'm just concerned that we take a look at this as we go down the line in terms of a potential cost that could be imposed upon this unexpectedly as this water is cleaned. It's going to be an expensive process, and that it may not even end up out in the ditch. But so it may not become available because it is truly interruptible in that way. And this is something that's not in the control of anybody in this entire county. It's coming from the state. So I just like to draw attention to that, because I don't know if it's fully been, we fully looked at all the potential difficulties that could be coming up out of that. And that's basically my comment onto the whole matter, just to stir this up for discussion. It might be something we need to discuss on an agenda at some point in a little more detail to get clarified.
Okay, anything else on you, was it, while we're here?
Can I add to that? Just coming from agriculture myself, there was a time, Paul, maybe you could help me out, where the state came down and said they'll accept the dry water flows by M1 pulling that water. They'll accept that as a pass in terms of cleaning up the water. But then they kind of basically said, but that's it. And the winter and the spring or the other months, it would be basically up to the growers, a third party for monitoring and whatnot. And so I think there's a lot of rumblings going on in terms of the state possibly saying point of discharge and making the growers clean up the water at their sump pumps. in which in a lot of parts of the Blanco and Castroville, it's all tile drain. And so that would mean that you would have to clean up and maybe have to recycle the water on the individual ranch. So I think it's something that we need to kind of be watching on our radar and really pay attention to see what's going on moving forward.
I'll just add to that. I wonder what level of advocacy could be done by our agency if we're already doing the recycling of the water, which is, if that's the overall objective of that effort, then we're kind of already being able to achieve that through the system that we have. So why create an undue burden on a system that might be functioning, have some level of functionality to it? So I agree with the comments that are being made there.
I think what they're trying to do is they want to go after percolation, which is, in times during the rainy season, they want to be able to capture everything. Right?
Yeah, if I may just, so Kent, you're absolutely right. The regional board, 3 executive directors ago, wrote a letter saying, actually, I guess 2 executive directors ago, wrote a letter saying that pure water taking the Blanco drain flows in the summertime meets the 303 delisted requirements for Blanco drain. So we're taking the pollutants out of the environment. The wintertime, where we don't take all the water, was the concern for the regional board. The executive director at the time, John Robertson, was like, yeah, the project's so good and does so many other benefits. If you look at it holistically, we could probably get somewhere. Well, then Ag Order 4.0 comes in and has a prescriptive path for deviations to the law. So the current executive director, Matt Keeling, said there's a path through there. It's just going to take a couple years and we need to pursue it. Frankly, it was, those of you that don't know, the gentleman sitting over here, Ara Azarian, is the general manager for the Monterey County Water Resources Agency. And Ara and I have certainly been talking about this because it affects Blanco drain, the flows. It affects all the growers out there. And frankly, we have a potential solution. It's just working through the regulatory body to make that work. Having said that, we, water resources, growers, shippers, and ourselves have been going down to San Luis Obispo for the last 7 years going through this. It's just Ag Order 4.0 has changed a few things.
All right, thanks for joining us today, by the way, and congrats on the new role. All right, we'll go to Kay.
Letter K or K for Kimberly?
That worked out, didn't it?
Yeah, it did. Brought to you by Sesame Street. I wanted to just express sort of my disappointment. In the last meeting, I had made the request for the Water Resource Agency to provide a letter to M1W just on what source waters were available as we were going into the potential for signing off on WIFIA loans. The city has been exploring WIFIA loans for its own projects, and I certainly know the debt issuances can be significant. So I just have to say this because it's on the agenda, that I was under the impression that the WIFIA loans were not signed off by this meeting. And you can imagine my surprise when I was informed that the WIFIA loans have been signed off. They were signed off on June 15th and the agenda came out on the 20th. So the point of the letter was really to sort of figure out where the source waters were before we go into this large amount of debt over Pure Water Monterey's expansion. Thank you, Paul, for reaching out and trying to get ahead of it with me and explaining. Obviously, being 6 months in, didn't realize that the board had approved it in November, and nobody said anything in the last meeting about the docs being signed prior to the next board meeting. So just would have preferred more clear communication as I was making those requests from the last meeting, because obviously it's a lot less impactful if we've already signed the loan docs. So thank you.
Anybody else on letter K? All right, I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent.
So moved.
Second. Moved and seconded. Any last comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Chair, we need to do a roll call because Chair Moore is next.
Thank you. Roll call vote, please.
Rhonda,
Yes.
Castroville,
Yes.
County of Monterey.
Aye.
Del Rey Oaks,
Aye.
Marina Coast,
Yes,
Monterey,
Yes.
Pacific Grove.
Aye.
Salinas,
Yes.
Seaside.
Aye.
Motion carries 9 yes and 1 absent.
All right, we'll move to item number 9, committee reports. Letter A is Budget Personnel Committee, which was canceled. And then item B is Recycled Water Committee, which was held on June 15th. Entertain a motion for approval of the minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Can you go out to public for this one? We'll go out to the public for public comment.
Comment.
Alrighty, bring it back to the committee and do a roll call vote, please.
Rhonda,
Yes.
Castroville,
Yes.
County of Monterey.
Aye.
Del Rey Oaks,
Aye.
Marina Coast,
yes,
Monterey,
Yes.
Pacific Grove.
Aye.
Salinas,
Yes.
Seaside.
Aye.
Motion carries 9 yes and 1 absent.
Okay, we'll go on to number 10, public hearing. Letter A is consider adoption of resolution number 2023-14, declaring liens against real property of delinquent sewer user charges, and pass it to Paul for a staff presentation.
Yeah, good evening, board. So this is our annual process of basically what we do is we basically kind of look at the cutoff at the end of each calendar year. So in this case, basically it's delinquent counts as of December 2022. So we do really try to work with our customers to kind of give enough notices in advance, because ideally we'd rather collect it, their delinquent balances versus putting a lien and levy on the roll. So we do 3 notices, one in March, the second in April, and the third in June. But this has really been a very effective for us. We've used this in a number of years. Our collection rate in working with the county, within 1 year, we collect about 85% of our delinquencies, and within 5 years, 98%. So like I said, a very effective program. The notices were published in both the Californian and the Herald in June. And basically, kind of in working with the board years past, the amount of the levy that we put, the minimum amount is basically a 2-month amount. So in this case, there was no levy less than $157 that was put for the delinquent accounts. And with that, basically, we're recommending adoption of the resolution. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions?
So is it delinquent after 2 billing cycles, or is that when the lien is placed?
So, yeah, so the way it works is, we bill on a bi-monthly basis. So, basically after, if they haven't paid within 2 months of their bill, that would be considered delinquent. So, but the lien, if you think about it, it's at least 6 months in arrears, because we're basically taking the balances as of December. And per state law, we have to do a certain number of notices before we can actually do a lien.
Okay, now the 2 delinquent payments, is that kind of based on history? Why, you decided on 2, or is that the most effective?
That's a great question. So yeah, it was actually brought up. I think actually before I even started, just a little bit before I started, it was, go ahead, Paul, do you want to mention it? Yeah.
I'll just give a little history on it. So we had some public comment on this process because it can disrupt people. And at the time we used to do whatever was delinquent, we would put on. And the comment came up, is like, hey, there's fees, there's other things. Can you consider a larger amount, like being delinquent 4 months versus 2? And that seemed reasonable. Our staff discussed it at the time and moved forward with that change. So it was a deliberate change to the 2 billing cycles.
Okay. Those are my questions. Thanks.
Any other questions from the board? Take it out to the public.
Tom has his
Oh,
hand up.
sorry, Tom.
yeah, not a problem. Thank you very much, Vice Chair Williamson. So there are a few folks in that lengthy list who are chronically on it year in, year out. I know of one person who's been on it for about 30 years. But here's the question. we charge some penalties and interest, is that correct?
That is correct.
Can you characterize effectively, you might think that we are loaning by not collecting a certain amount of money to these folks on the liens list, but we are charging them a penalty fee and some sort of interest. How much revenue does that generate, that interest and those penalties? And is it worth it if you look at it from an investment perspective? Could we do better investing that money somewhere else? Number one. Number two, could we move some of the revenue from the penalties and interest into our low income fund? So 2 questions.
Yeah, let me answer both of those questions. So the first one, and that's a very, let me answer probably your last question first about the customer assistance program. So yeah, and that's basically on the customer assistance program, just as a reminder for the board, we can only use non-fee related revenue in essence. So in essence, our primarily 2 sources of revenue for the program is the penalties, as the chair mentioned, and also interest revenue as well too. So to answer a couple of his earlier questions as well too, we generate at least about $400,000 of penalty revenue each year. So it's a pretty significant source of revenue to us. And the way it works, there's kind of 2 charges basically. And we basically charge the maximum per state law. And if I remember right, I think if I remember right, the penalty is 10%, and then it's a 1.5% interest, per month in essence. So that significantly is much higher than our overall rate of return on investment. To give you an idea right now, it depends on whether you're investing in LAIF or CAMP, but they range between 3 to 5%. So significantly more than just our general investment pool. So did I answer all your questions, Chair Moore, with any others?
You did, and you presented it clearly. And the conclusion is it's really not in our financial interest or our low income program interest to get people off the lien list faster.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, we want to encourage prompt payment. It does. Let me answer that, just add on to a little bit. It's a pretty significant investment of our staff time in following up on delinquent accounts. If everybody paid on time, we would be able to kind of invest our limited staff resources in other areas. But the idea is, those penalties at least partially offset those costs that we incur, in monitoring our delinquent accounts. But ideally, we'd love to have where everybody was paying their bills 100% on time.
Thank you very much.
Can I ask a follow-up question to that?
Yeah.
Were these numbers taken into account when we looked at the calculations of the cost savings from transitioning to putting this on the tax roll?
Yeah, we basically figured we would likely have some lower penalty because the counties. So to give you perspective, our delinquency rate kind of ranges between 1 to 3% annually. The counties, in looking at their history of their property tax, it's typically always been under 1%, their delinquency rate. So it was kind of a little bit of shifting what we looked at for our revenues. In essence, what would happen, we'd collect more of our current revenues up front because we'd have less delinquencies, but we'd get less delinquency revenue in essence. So
okay, thank you.
I just want to make a comment. I'm new to this, but it was just what I was listening to. It was a good comment about how much we're making with the penalties, but then it went into somehow we appreciate the penalties and fees were an investment option or something like that, right? So I just want to clear all of that up. We're not in the process of making money here, are we?
No.
We're talking about enforcement.
It's absolutely enforcement. It's, the penalty, basically penalties are not designed as a true offset, but it's designed the fact that partially, we do incur significant cost, in monitoring our delinquent accounts. So.
Right. But it's not an investment.
It's not an investment. Absolutely
not. Don't want people to be delinquent.
No, absolutely not.
I know everybody get it, but it was just, the question sent you in that direction. And towards the end, you clarified that we want people to pay their bills, but this is a new concept for a lot of people for it to go on the roll. So, I don't think I'm going to support it for other reasons, but I just want the board to be clear that you guys are not looking at it as an investment.
No. And
But I do have another question. How does because the property tax rolls, I don't know how many years it takes for them to go, to lien your house and make you sell your house. I think that's a couple years, right? 5 years. And so we will be waiting on that. But they're so good at people paying their tax rolls, property tax rolls, that we'll get the money. And is there an average? Is that every year? Is that like, a 3-year type of, by the time people get?
so generally speaking, like Fred mentioned, the delinquency rate on the property taxes is under 1%. So it is far less than we see just sending our bills out. In terms of the time to actually recover those other delinquencies, I don't know what that time frame is.
In the county,
it was 5 years.
it
that
is
they'd
5
be
years.
paid
It
up.
could go up to 5
That's
years.
exactly right.
No, that was it. That was it. Thank you.
And if I may, certainly no, this is not a money-making thing. This is truly enforcement for delinquent accounts. And this is one of the, for me personally, one of the main reasons moving to the tax rolls. I've been in this position with other agencies where we've done liens and did the notices in the paper, and it's not a positive thing to do. It is, I'm with Fred. We just wish everyone had the ability to pay their bills on time and did. Moving to the tax rolls eliminates this process. So this public hearing, if we were to go to the tax rolls in the future, all things happening, this wouldn't occur. And this is, I mentioned it to the city of Monterey the other day at their council meeting. To me, this is a large benefit to the potential changing of billing.
Any other questions? Take it out to the public.
Alex Miller. Go ahead, Mr. Miller.
Yes, thank you. This is Alex Miller, Seaside resident, Monterey One Water customer. It's been about probably 8 to 10 years now. I've been looking at this and been going to the meetings. And I think when Mr. Scudo said there was some public comment, I hope he was referring to when I was involved with that. And we were seeing liens for $50, $60 on people's properties. And it's such a slap to the face to a lot of these ratepayers in our area that some people are elder, have dementia, forget to pay their bill. The Monterey One Water system billing has been, for the lack of better words, not very easy to use. There's no automatic billing. The online system is limited. There's one place to pay your bill in Seaside for our ratepayers. And then on the list in the packet, you see the same thing over again with a very small amount of money that we're leaning for. So if you want to take the lien off, you have to pay the 10% penalty plus the 1% that Mr. Fred just mentioned, plus you have to pay a penalty to remove the lien, plus you pay a penalty to the county. So some of the people on this list are Stephen Mora for $157, Cece Williams, $158.50, Ishiawa, $161.50, Jeffrey Sugal, $161.50, Enrique Garcia, $162.65, Winthrop Seville, $161.50, Corona Hazel, $167.69, Sergio Ruiz, $165.98, and the list goes on and on and on. The list goes on and on and on for people that owe between $160 or $157 and $250. There's I have 3 pages of names here that are getting a penalty from this agency for a very small amount of money. And to lien somebody's property in the county for $157, I think just shows that the agency is not being friendly towards the ratepayers. And a lot of them, we don't know the situation. We don't know why they didn't pay it. And I know people on this list, I don't think they get the outreach that staff has said. I don't think they get that. I don't think anybody calls them. From my experience, these people are on this list and a lot of people don't even know they're on the list. So I hope that you guys will set a standard, a minimum of like at least $300, because the people that owe 1 or 2 bills, should they really get a lien on their property at a huge penalty I think that's unfair. Thank you.
Okay, and we'll go ahead and close public comment and bring it back to the board for further deliberation or a motion.
Just a comment to kind of follow up on Mr. Miller's comments there. Do we have any breakdown on how much is, people are delinquent that are under 200 or under 500 or anything like that?
And I mean, I could get that quick, it'd take me a little bit, but I can't give you an answer this second. In essence, I would just say I was kind of scanning through the list myself. Really, the large portion are, I would say at least I would definitely say over $300. The amount he was
Over how
mentioning.
many?
Over $300.
Over
The amount
300.
he was mentioning. Yeah.
I think there's a reasonable point being made there on a small amount, understanding that people go through divorces, you're talking about a couple of bills, or somebody gets an illness and something gets missed. I mean, I can be, see some sympathy to that comment.
So, and I'm glad Mr. Miller spoke up. Yeah, I was certainly referencing when Mr. Miller brought it to our attention, however many years ago, we did make that change. Staff recommended to the board to the 2 billing cycles. We can certainly look at it again if you would like. We're open, but obviously, as Fred mentioned, it's a minimum of the 4 months. Obviously, by the time it gets on the tax rolls, it's generally more, but we're open to whatever is the best balance between making sure we get our revenues as well as treating the customers fairly and equitably. So we obviously hopefully we can move forward with this, but we can bring that back if the board would so desires.
Can I just ask a follow-up? How many more times would we be doing this before we would potentially be switching over to the tax rolls?
So basically, yeah, the way it would work, we would need to do it probably 2 more times. Well, because remember, we end December 20 at the end of December of each year. So we'd have to do in essence for the stuff for December of 2023, in essence through June of 2024. But obviously we'd have to wait another whole year for that in essence. So
We'd have 2 more times. I mean, certainly next year, next June, you'd be seeing us again. Then hopefully get on the tax rolls if the board decides to move forward with it that fall. But then there's that in between time frame.
Paul, the only thing I want to just add though real quickly, we'd have to kind of look. So basically the idea is when you put stuff as a lien on the roll, it relates to properly, basically service to the property. Most of our, in essence, I think we can put, most on the property tax roll. We just would have to see if there's anything that we'd have to still bill in-house in essence. So there potentially could be a small amount in the future that we might still have to lien, but it would be a very, very small minority. So I just want to clarify that.
But that would also go to the board if,
Absolutely.
because it's a change
Absolutely.
on the process we're going to move forward with.
Absolutely.
Did you have any?
Just, for your follow-up on your comments, there's perhaps when this comes back, maybe we can have a breakdown just to see where the numbers fit and see if there's a significant amount there.
Yeah. Well, so here's the thing. We have to actually have the board adopt it tonight because
I'm
so
happy with the adopting tonight.
So can you?
absolutely. What we can do for the next, in fact, maybe we'll do it for BPC is we'll do an analysis for BPC, basically kind of in the ranges of how much it was, because then what the board could decide on, even the committee, is like Paul was saying, for going forward, here's a new policy, we'll recommend a new policy. So absolutely. We'll have that for BPC for next time. Thanks.
Okay.
Okay, and in addition to that, can we take a look at the amount of delinquency? I mean, the time of delinquency is in addition to the total amount. So I think it makes sense that we as a board kind of take a look at that, whether it's the amounts or the amount of time the account is actually delinquent.
Yeah, we'll give you some more information on both. Absolutely.
Okay.
So
I was gonna say something similar as it relates to how much does that time equate to, right? Is it 2 months? I understand the 2 months now, but it's 2 months too soon to put it as a lien. And then it should be a little bit more than the average, 170, 200, maybe it's the 300. I don't know, but that's where the data comes in. So you guys can have a balance with it.
Yeah.
Because I think if you're going to go that route, it's very important to tell the homeowner, we took it as far as we can, but we had to be efficient with what we're trying to do, which is to have the bills paid. Yeah, that's it. I think you should just show the ratepayer and the property owner that you took as far as you can. And then I think they will understand how it got there. You know, you're not just taking the easy way out. You know, there's nothing wrong with being more efficient and you guys not tracking it down, but to put $160 there, you know, to put, you know, something like that. And my last point is, I thought it was after 2 months anyway. So I really I want to get to is how long does it take for me to not be paying my bill for you guys to process it to the county, to the lien?
If I can just add on that a little bit. So
Actually, first, can you answer this question?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
4 months is the minimum that's on here, but it's also how many months hypothetically he
Right.
didn't pay his bill would he see?
Yeah, so it's minimum, it's minimum 2 months of the charges, because that's the 157.
That's 2 billing cycles, that's 4 months,
Right. Well, it depends on the area though,
Okay,
Paul.
go
So
ahead.
that's the thing. This probably the 157 very well could be either two to 4 months, depending on the billing area. So if you think about what happens is this, we have to do the cutoff as of December, but they're getting and this is all in the staff report as well too, but they're getting 3 notices before basically it gets on the lien. Because obviously we'd rather have it settled than to have it go through the lien process. So we purposely wait a minimum of 6 months on the delinquencies before it's, you know, any sort of lien potentially could be placed.
So that's the answer about
6 months is the question.
Yeah.
Is the
Right.
answer to your question?
And okay, my last point is, like you were saying about that person with 157, it doesn't make a difference, less than $200. That's roughly how many months, Paul?
It depends on the
Yeah.
jurisdiction, but
Right, and we want to be
2
fair,
3
but
months.
you know, the
It's-
person that has the $200 water bill and is not able to pay it supposedly is just as strapped as the person not paying, you know, the $100 water bill. I was just wondering how quick does it get there? And you guys answered the question about you are noticing them 3 or 4 times.
Yeah.
And that seems to be fair.
Okay, I see Chair Moore's hand up.
Yes, thank you very much, Fred. So if the board approves this tonight, when will you be sending these amounts to the county?
Yeah, so we have to send it, basically it's due to the county in early August. So we always make it a practice to get it to them basically by the end of July. So that, you know, that we don't miss the deadline, because that's critical, because otherwise we'd have to wait another whole year to put it on the roll.
And besides the fact that during that time, they'll be getting yet another bill from us that I presume shows the delinquent amounts, do we send them a separate notice now, next week in August, saying we have now liened your property and sent this over to the county?
Well, this is what I know, and I could provide a little bit more follow-up later. What I do know is this: once we put the lien on the person's, work with the county to put the lien on their account, basically that amount is taken out of their account, so that, you know, they would no longer see those amounts on their billing statements going forward. I don't think we send them a second letter, but I think it probably shows as a credit, is my understanding, on like their following statement. And that's something I can, when I come back with the board on this information, I can kind of give a little bit more information on that.
If
I
we
could-
zero out the account, could we put a note on their invoice when an account zeroed out that your balance has been sent to the county?
Yeah, and I can definitely look into that, Paul. And I maybe, but let me find out. Let me talk with my customer service supervisor, and when I report back on this information, I can give an update to the committee on exactly kind of what we do. So
Yeah, I'd appreciate that, because I can certainly see where some ratepayers who struggle with reading billing statements to begin with, for whatever reason, might see a credit there and think, oh, thank you, you've just reduced my bill. I don't need to take any further action.
yeah.
Now, Fred, you may not be able to answer this question. Perhaps Director Church could. Once the lien arrives at the county, how long does it take for the ratepayer to get official notice from the county? Is that simply going to,
Pop quiz.
sorry, Is that just going to be with the regular tax statements, or is there going to be a separate notice saying, hey, here's this lien that's now been placed on your property tax?
Everybody's looking at you.
Supervisor.
I'm just a supervisor. This is not my favorite.
Well, I raise these questions simply because this actually goes to Director Oglesby's question about how long, what's the length of time potentially before one of our customers really realizes that he owes some money and he's going to have to pay it one way or another. And in addition, during that same period of time, he could be continuing to ignore Monterey One water bills and further accruing for the next cycle of liens more debt. At any rate, Fred, if you could enlighten us, not tonight, but at your earliest convenience, and probably you're right, through budget and personnel would be the right way to go.
Yeah, happy to report back on kind of those three things, kind of rate of delinquencies, basically the amounts in different categories, and kind of what we do is follow up. We'll have that all in a separate report for the committee. So
And I'll try to be quick. Sorry about this, but it's only once a year, right?
this is only once a year.
And so the time frame you have to give the county that information so they could put it on the document to send it to me on my tax bill is when again?
That's the key thing, because
End of July.
right.
Right, end of July. And I had the same thing, Tom, where it goes to, okay, that's fine, but I'm still not paying my bill, but I won't get that update or delinquency or a new lien into the next year. Is that
That's
correct?
exactly it.
And you guys can work through that. It was just, my next comment goes to the letter of, the third and final letter. How does that get to the property owner, right? Does the letter go to the property owner or does it go to the house? Because, represent a community with close to 60% renters,
Typically the way it works is, most of our accounts are with the property owners. And we talked about this earlier with our potential conversion for the property accounts. We do have about, it depends on average, but about 6% of our properties basically were, in essence, they're sent in care of to the renters. So they would basically get the notice. My understanding, and again, I can clarify this for the committee meeting, when it comes to the delinquencies like this, I think both the property owner and the renter are kind of made aware of it. So
well, that's my point to the board is I think the second letter or the third letter has to go to the property owner because the bill is going to the house and not being paid. Property owner has to know in 6 months, 10 months, when I get my new property tax, this $200 is going to be there, and then you guys have we had a concern no, I'm just saying as community leaders to deal with. Now all of a sudden the property owner is raising my rent because they got to recoup that $300 or $400 of delinquency. So I just want to make sure the property owner knows. And so if you guys have that figured out, or you can figure it out at the next meeting,
So we will certainly get that, but my understanding was that those notices go to the property owner, and when the property owner
in care of, yeah.
does an in care of to a renter, it goes to both parties. So, because you're right, you both need to know. Now, we will confirm that though.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's about 9% of the overall, that includes commercial as well as residential, do it in a care of, meaning you have your tenants or your renters paying it. The other 91%, it is the property owners that pay it, and they're getting that bill as well as the notices.
Okay.
Fred, couple of things resonated from Mr. Miller's comments, and one of them was there's no I know that the system needs to be updated, but there's no automated payments.
So let me explain kind of the options that people have in essence right now. Yeah, ours is not a full-fledged system. This is why, obviously we were kind of looking to potentially go to the county in a future year. But the customers do have the ability to auto pay their bills. So they're just set up with their checking accounts to auto pay, on their bills for every 2 months. They can also phone in, a payment as well too. They have the ability to pay by credit card. We have that set up with our third-party vendor. And we also have a couple different payment stations. I think we have one in Seaside. There's one in Salinas, and when I just got from my staff, we're adding a second one in Salinas as well too. So we do have some options. And obviously our Dropbox is available 24/7 that anybody can drop by stuff. And obviously we can accept it at the front desk as well.
But I think Ken's question is the auto pay options. And I think the only auto pay option is if you sign up for like taking out your checking account.
Gotcha.
That's the way it works.
Yeah, that a lot of customers do that. So.
And then the other one is the staff outreach to these. Is there actual phone calls that go out besides the notices?
Because we have you have to remember, we have.
The answer is no.
Yeah, well, and I just want to elaborate on this a little bit. I mean, we have, over $61,000. I mean, 61,000 customers in essence. So for us to do phone calls for, this many delinquent accounts would be a huge amount of effort, basically. So this is why we do the letter. I mean, this is why we do basically the 3 times with the letters, because we found that's just the most efficient. And we do get a fair amount of response, from the letters as well too. And that is our goal, to obviously bring this down as low as we can.
Good. I'll entertain a motion. If anybody's willing to move forward.
So move.
Second.
Okay, any other deliberation? All right, roll call vote, please.
Veranda,
Yes.
Castroville,
Yes.
County of Monterey.
Aye.
Delray Oaks.
Aye.
Marina Coast,
Yes.
Monterey,
Yes.
Pacific Grove,
Aye.
Salinas,
Yes.
Seaside.
No.
That's 8 yes, 1 no, and 1 absent.
Okay, we'll move on to item number 11, which is this work. I'm not going to read the whole thing here, but regarding the change to the total dissolved solids local limit to 1,800 milligrams per liter. And I believe this is going to Joanne.
Yes.
Yeah.
Good evening, board of directors. My name is Joanne Lay. I'm the Laboratory and Environmental Services Manager. I'm here to ask you to approve the first reading of the ordinance 2023-01, which proposes the following. Update the total dissolved solids. I'm just going to refer to as TDS from here on out. Local limits to 1,800 milligram per liter, down from the current limit of 7,400 milligram per liter, based on a study conducted by Larry Walker Associates, our engineering technical consultants, and prohibit discharges incompatible pollutants, and that's filtered water discharge, hauling tank waste, or hauled waste into our sanitary sewer collection system. Required all new dischargers to Monterey One water system must apply for a permit to connect and discharge to the sanitary sewer collection system, and incorporate pertinent sections of 40 CFR 403, that's general pretreatment regulations, and that's from the federal regulations, as required by the State Water Resources Control Board. Followed an audit of our source control program in October of 2022, and established the administrative fine schedule as referenced in ordinance 2019-01, section 6.06, and finding that the proposed ordinance categorically exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act under the Class 7 and Class 8 exemptions, and that's State Sequest Guidelines 15307 and 15308. The TDS local limit update is intended to protect the quality of recycled water produced at the Salinas Valley Reclamation Project delivered to our growers in the CSIP areas. If the water produced has TDS level are too high, and as you all know, the water can burn or otherwise harm the crops being produced. Also, high TDS water constrains the filtration system and reduce the useful life of our AWPF treatment facility. We'll continue, though, to accept brine hallways to our facility and other filter waste that is that can be commingled with our RO concentrate generated as part of the AWPF treatment process and sent directly to the outfall, which has a much higher effluent limit for TDS. Staff has worked collaboratively with our permitted industrial users, especially those that are likely to be impacted by this ordinance, to ensure that they can and will comply with the proposed TDS local limit. And we've reached out to 2 out of the 4 this morning today, but previously we've contacted them to inform them of an alternative pathway to comply. And so the adoption of the revisions of this ordinance has no fiscal impact. The amounts of fines to be collected from any violations of this ordinance is established in section 6.06 of this ordinance. And if adopted by the board after the second reading, staff will have to work with our member agencies to adopt in total or update their current local codes ordinances to supersede the existing references to older versions of Monterey One Water Ordinance. And approval of the updated ordinance will allow our agency to protect our water product and our treatment processes at the RTP, SVRP, and AWPF facilities, and further streamline the permitting and enforcement processes for regulated discharges to our sanitary sewer collection system. That is all I have. With that, either Jim and I would be happy to answer your questions.
Any questions?
So this is not a regulatory requirement. This is more to allow the integrity of the system. Is that
Correct.
what we're looking at here, so that we're providing quality water to the growers and also quality water to the Pure Water Monterey?
Correct.
Yeah, but there is a regulatory confluence there
There is.
that we need to adhere to the regulations specific to establishing the local limits for us. Any changes like Joanne alluded to, the other dischargers, like giving them a way to do it. There are regulations that dictate you can use a mass balance approach, which is what she is suggesting. So there is a nexus with regulations. We are just trying to be protective of our unique situation of providing water for ag as well as potable water. So if you went to hypothetically Hyperion down in LA, their local limits would probably be entirely different since they're just discharging to the ocean.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
It does. And I mean, primarily, who does this affect? I mean, I would think in the cities, you know, Delray Oak, Seaside, Monterey, not necessarily an issue, right? I mean,
that's a great question, and something Joanne and I have been talking about, because we hear from the dischargers. This change affects 4 of the industrial dischargers.
Correct.
And who are and that's when she said she talked to 2 of the 4. And it's Monterey Bay Aquarium, Culligan, Sequential, and
Prologis, which is a remediation company. They discharge seasonally, and they're wrapping up their project next year.
So that's why it's easy, versus the other one of calling all the delinquent accounts. There's 4.
Mhm.
And you've talked to who are the 2 you talked to?
So we
today?
spoke to the aquarium today and Sequential today.
Excellent.
And we've also tried to reach out to Culligan, but we couldn't get a hold of the president.
So there's a caveat to the regulations. Those dischargers may not be within the 1800 TDS, but there's a mass balance calculation that the lab can make for specific industries. And it sort of totalizes, like it's cumulative. As long as you don't go above this level, collectively, we're good. And it's just, once again, just the primary reason is to be protective of the agricultural reuse water.
okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I guess the first, follow-up would be how, you adopt ordinance, how do you enforce it? And so are these dischargers, they register with you? And I mean, it looks like if I'm looking at the effluent limitations, I mean, you've got pH, you've got all sorts of parameters you're measuring. So you also enforce the measurement scheme that's being implemented to monitor these standards?
Correct. These industries are issue a permit, and our local limits are listed in their permits. And on a frequency, they're testing for these parameters to ensure that they meet all of our local limits.
It's a pretty large change, isn't it, to go from 7,400 to 1,800? That's
Yeah.
And maybe if you want to speak to that, just what's driving that?
Certainly. If I correct me if I'm wrong here. So as Joanne said, we have permits with these people. We also have a source control department that currently reports through Joanne that goes and checks on them periodically. So there's a good relationship there. And I think an open communication line to make sure that they're meeting. Now, to your question of why from 7,400 to 1,800, we've always had to have local limits of some parameters. As Scott alluded to, it is unique to us. The 7,400 was established without our primary secondary treatment plant, as you well know, can discharge through our outfall to the marine sanctuary. So the 7,400 would meet those requirements so that we can meet California Ocean Plan. In sort of stepping back and looking at it in a broader sense, well, it doesn't just go to the ocean. It also goes on crops and it goes to drinking water. So Larry Walker and Associates, Joanne had to hire them and have them take a look at it through that lens. The driver actually that brought this up is we had a developer come in last year saying, hey, we would like to discharge our RO brine to you. And at face value, we're like, yeah, we really don't want that. That's not good for, we don't want to get any more salts out on the crops. But in looking at the ordinance, it wasn't as, in my opinion, wasn't as tight as we would like it. And I'll let Jim correct me in a more legalese language. So we've spent well over a year trying to craft an ordinance that is tight, that does meet the requirements of this agency, which is unique because we recycle so much water, but also tries to address our industrial dischargers.
As a percentage of total flow into the system, how much do these industrial discharges represent?
I'll do the non-technical one and say dinky.
Yeah.
But I'll let
Itsy
Joanne actually give us the actual amount.
It's about 10% of the entire discharge.
That's substantial. Okay, that's all I have. Thank you.
Everything else, are you good?
No, I was just going to say, I mean, this was driven by, as Paul alluded to, the updated local limits study, because the prior local limit study didn't assess all of the uses that the water was putting to and restrictions on our facilities. So the new local limit study dropped it from that 74 down to the 1,800.
Yeah. And I think that study is right here.
Anybody on this side have questions? All right, I see Chair Moore's hand is up.
Yes, thank you. So do these four main industrial dischargers, do they truck this liquid to our plant, or are they just simply putting it into the wastewater collection system of wherever they're located?
Yeah, currently they're discharging directly into our sanitary sewer system.
I presume there are some other smaller users who truck waste to us?
Correct.
And roughly how many acre feet a year does that represent?
I don't have that number on top of my head, but I can look into it and bring it back to the board.
Okay. All right, thank you very much.
All right, let's take it out to the public. Public comment.
I'm not seeing any public comment.
All right, we'll bring it back to the
Move
board.
approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any other discussion?
If Vice Chair, this is an ordinance, so we're, as part of the agenda, we're asking you to waive the first reading, which would require us to announce the title of the ordinance, which is ordinance number 2023-01, which proposes updates to ordinance number 2019-01 to change the total dissolved solid local limit to 1,800 milligrams per liter based on a study by Larry Walker and Associates to incorporate pertinent sections of 40 CFR 403 as required by the Environmental Protection Agency and the State Water Resources Control Board, and to establish the administrative fine schedule as referenced in ordinance 2019-01, section 6.06, and find that the ordinance is categorically exempt from the California Environmental Qualities Act under class 7 and Class 8 exemptions.
I'll accept the amendment.
And I'm assuming I don't have to read that again. You did that for us.
I accepted his amendment.
I don't think we should let the vice chair off that easy. No, you can accept.
I shouldn't have asked. All right, let's do roll call vote, please.
Veranda,
Yes.
Castroville,
Yes.
County of Monterey,
Aye.
Delray Oaks,
Aye.
Marina Coast,
Yes,
Monterey,
Yes.
Pacific Grove,
Aye.
Salinas,
Yes.
Seaside,
Aye.
9 yes and 1 absent.
Perfect. And then would it be appropriate for us to do B and C together? Is that okay?
We certainly can.
Okay, let's go ahead and
You're
do
good.
that.
Good evening, board. So this would be the Dinky presentation.
Think he's good sometimes.
So action items 11B and 11C both relate to the construction management team. So key team member for Pure Water Monterey expansion. The construction managers, they're our main point of contact with the contractor. They're in the trenches. They're responsible for quality control and inspection. They interface with the engineer in that context. In the context of the shutdowns and startups, they interface with the M1W operators. We can't say enough how this particular team, while they're new contracts, they're actually tried and true construction management team members, many of which have worked on Pure Water Monterey for the last 4 years. So with that, we'd open it up to questions.
Anybody on this side? Anybody on this side? Chair Moore? All right, let's take it out to the public.
Public comment at this time.
Okay, bring it back to the
Move
committee.
approval of both.
All right, is there a second?
Again.
All right, any other deliberation? That's probably the fastest that you've ever had.
Don't,
Sorry. Roll
don't
call
jinx
vote,
it. There's no traffic.
Slow me down.
Veranda,
Yes.
Castroville,
Yes.
County of Monterey,
Aye.
Delray Oaks,
Aye.
Marina Coast,
yes,
Monterey,
Yes.
Pacific Grove,
Aye.
Salinas,
Yes.
Seaside,
Aye.
9 yes, 1 absent.
All right, we'll move on to item D. And I think that's Daryl.
A for Kimberly, D for Daryl.
Yay. That was intentional.
Good evening, members of the board, Chairman Moore and Vice Chair Williamson. The Advanced Water, my name's Daryl Harris, Utilities and Maintenance Manager. The Advanced Water Purification Facility has a capacity of 5 million gallons a day, which is sequentially injected into the Seaside Basin for groundwater recharge. In October of last year, the 21 kV switchgear experienced an internal failure, which was sequentially repaired to operate the facility. However, the temporary repair has reduced the loading capabilities and decreased the integrity of the switchgear. BPK hired a third party to inspect the 21 kV gear, and it was recommended that the entire gear lineup should be replaced. In addition, it was determined that the new switchgear should be enclosed to protect it from the marine environment. Staff reviewed costs of constructing new on-site building to house the new switchgear, as well as purchasing a prefabricated power distribution center, or PDC, designed with the switchgear included. After evaluation, it was decided that the PDC installation was the best alternative, as it significantly reduces the cutover downtime and on-site construction costs. M1W's procurement manual under general procurement practices allow us to use cooperative purchasing. And in 2022, we became a Sourcewell member. Monterey One Water requests a quote from Wesco, a Sourcewell member, for an Eaton Cutler hammer switchgear and PDC, which was for a not to exceed cost of $2,029,485.05, including tax and delivery. Expenses will be budgeted in 2024-25 fiscal budget, as the lead time for the switchgear is 82 weeks. Staff requests that the board of directors approve the contract authorizing the purchase of the Eaton Cutler hammer switchgear and power distribution center without competitive bidding in the not to exceed amount
of $2,029,485.05. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions on the right?
So just for my clarification, Sourcewell basically does our job for us, right? They go out and make sure they find the lowest price for whatever equipment.
Yes.
And okay,
Yes, the competitive bidding is within Sourcewell, and the best pricing is set up for government agencies.
got it. Okay, thank you.
Now, thank you for that, Scott. Sorry. So they do that. The reason this is before you, this is the largest one of these that I've been associated with. So we wanted to bring it to the board because it is somewhat unusual, but certainly staff uses Sourcewell and the other services as well to streamline some of the purchasing that we do. This one's just a little unusual.
Let's finish this slide for camera purposes and then we'll come back.
For camera purposes.
Oh, maybe actually it's on you now.
I'll just start talking.
Spotlight's on
and
you.
then it goes-
Yeah. Is that what it does? Does it
So-
go?
No, they actually
There's somebody
switch it in
manual
there.
back,
Yeah. Right.
It's fine. I don't need to be on camera. So I want to like actually unpack this a little bit, and I am not necessarily opposed to it, but the red flag went up with when we're spending $2 million without formal competitive bidding. And just for a little bit of context, like my council actually rejected work that a vendor had done because it was during the pandemic. It was all done correctly, but it did not go out for a competitive bid. I understand cooperative purchasing, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they are doing the competitive bidding. It means that they're buying bulk, right? Isn't that what cooperative purchasing? It's like LAPD buys 100 police cars and the city of Seaside can buy 3 additional cars onto that contract that they're purchasing. So I guess I'm just trying to figure out, I don't know if Cutler Hammer is the only company that does switch gears or if there are multiple companies, but a $2 million purchase without a formal competitive bid, particularly in a government agency, is a little bit of a red flag for me.
Yeah, and our existing equipment is Cutler Hammer, the existing switchgear that is sitting there, and we're trying to replace in kind with the existing switchgear. So that's why we didn't go out to bidding for Allen Bradley or one of the other switchgear manufacturers. We're trying to replace in kind that's already programmed, and all of the settings are in this gear that will be just transferred over to the new gear when it's installed.
So that's the reason we want this gear, but you're absolutely right. And that's why it's here, is because this is unusual. Now, Fred, can you speak more to Sourcewell and the other purchasing? We have 2, don't we?
There's a couple different ones. Basically, a lot of times what'll happen is so our purchasing ordinance allows for cooperative purchasing, that we can enter into agreements with third parties that have this in place. And typically what they'll do is the state will a lot of times have done a contract bid for it, basically, and you just can quote their contract number and basically kind of add on to it. And I think that's the case with this one, Daryl, if I remember right. Is that
Yeah.
right?
So it's a little different than LA buying 100 and then Seaside grabbing 2 more. This is more of a Sourcewell broadcast going, please give us your best bids. We're going to pick, Acme Electric to source all the Eaton stuff, and we're going to buy it through Acme Electric. And then we go to Sourcewell, who's already done the bidding per se. It's a little different beast than the car one.
So through the chair, if I may, or vice chair, so then do you get to specify like, hey, we want the Eaton Cutler Hammer switchgear, or is it like you get what you get and it's the best deal? I'm just trying to figure out, like, $2 million without a competitive bid is a lot of money.
Yeah. So on this one, they happen to have Eaton Cutler Hammer. I'm not sure if they even have Allen Bradley. So if we wanted Allen Bradley, it may not have been a Sourcewell option, in which case we would have had to bid. We were lucky in that Eaton was within the Sourcewell umbrella.
And did we do the competitive check on what it would cost without Sourcewell?
Yeah, it is substantially more without going through Sourcewell, just going to it out on the street to get the bids through preferred vendors who can only sell Eaton switchgear You got Wesco, Gray Bar.
You got a quote from Wesco, didn't you?
Yes.
Can you define what substantially more means?
Yeah. What was the Wesco quote on? I know it wasn't a PDC, but it was still.
Yeah, so this here is still through Wesco. When we went up last time to get competitive bids, the other competitors, not for this exact setup for the PDC, but for the other lineup, they were probably $300,000 to $400,000 more.
And what the PDC is basically the things in a building. It comes as to protect from the marine environment and the wastewater environment. So the $300,000 to $400,000 more was just for switchgear that you put outside and isn't in a building. So it's not exactly apples and oranges, but the $300,000 to $400,000 more for less of equipment is sort of an indicator.
Okay, thank you.
I would like to
appreciate the
add.
clarification.
Go ahead, Tammy.
I would like to add that we're in the process of working with BBK on a warranty, and we are replacing it in kind, and we have that going on in the background. And Sourcewell has to offer us their best cost whenever we go through a Sourcewell project. Yes, this is high. We were about ready to take the same project to the board a few months ago for a cost of 1.2 million, but it did not include the building encasement, and it did not include equipment that was built for inside. And so I think that the price is, and maybe we should have included that in the staff report as far as very competitive and a good price. And this is something that if I could buy tomorrow, I would, but unfortunately it's such a long lead time. And, we're not guaranteed that temporary fix is going to last. I mean, it could go tomorrow, and we're doing the best we can. And I know this is a high dollar item, but anytime you buy the switchgear for AWPF, it would be interesting. And I know that Lindau's there. What was the original cost of what we are replacing right now? And so anyway, I would hope that that the board would understand that we have done due diligence and identify the best opportunity to get this as a long-term fix.
Just as a final comment, it's not so much Sourcewell that I'm concerned about. It's the non-competitive, no formal competitive bidding. That's the only thing that I would, just as we're going out for Pure Water Monterey and we are spending inordinate amounts of money, that's a big red flag for me in terms of transparency with government. Sourcewell, I think, is great. I do think it would have been helpful to have the comparatives in a staff report. So if you are coming forward in months or years to come with Sourcewell product that you're opting to use and not going to the formal bid, that it's just clearly outlined in the staff report, because that's a very important thing, particularly in some of the jurisdictions here, is to make sure that people have the opportunity to bid on it. Right. That's all. Thank you.
And my understanding was that this thing is, whatever it is, switchgear is just dropped in. And if you had to use a different mechanism, you had to change a whole bunch of stuff surrounding it. That wasn't highlighted. And I thought that was one of the reasons you did one non-competitive. So if you could just highlight, if you were not able to go through this and get this switchgear, you had to get a different kind, which meant more changes, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and we should definitely highlight that in the future.
Okay.
Hopefully we won't need to do this in the future, but.
All right, Chair Moore.
Yes, thank you very much. So we tend to think of electrical equipment as something you plug into the wall and if we're lucky, it runs forever. You don't have to do any maintenance to it. But on the other hand, I've had switches in my house, ordinary switches, go bad after enough flips on and off, and this is switchgear. So what sort of post-purchase costs in terms of categories of cost would we experience with this switchgear? Sure, we got a building, we might have to repaint the outside of the building at some point, but what about inside? Do we have to check settings? Do we need an expert in this particular switchgear and how the settings go in case there's a power outage and all the settings go away like they routinely do on my irrigation controller? What are those downstream training, replacement parts, recoating issues likely to see for this switchgear?
So great question, Tom. And I'm just going to open it up by saying this is the exact reason why we do have instrumentation techs and electricians that are certified and so on that all work for Daryl. Even our existing switchgear, they're doing maintenance on a continual basis. And they certainly would do it with this. I don't know if you want to get into the details, like what you would do to this compared to what you've done to the existing one.
Yeah, so all switchgear, we take it down to an annual maintenance on it where we pull everything apart, we vacuum it, wipe it down, check torque settings on the buses, meg buses, the cables. That's just our annual maintenance that we do on it. As far as settings, the settings are when they're uploaded and the coordination study is done, those settings are saved in the equipment. If we lose a protective relay, we would just replace the relay, but we have those settings stored on a drive that we can download to the new relay. Your settings doesn't change unless you, like when we do the expansion, if we're adding equipment, they might vary a little bit for coordination studies for arc flash protection. But as far as the regular maintenance, just the filters on the building, if it starts, paint starts fading or the coating, we could do painting or coating, and that's just your annual maintenance is done on it.
So if we went out to a competitive bid and a different brand of switchgear was, let's say, $50,000 less expensive in that competitive bidding process, can you characterize for us how challenging would it be for your staff to learn the ins and outs of controlling that other company's switchgear, given that in this case we're sticking with the same brand that our guys are trained in already?
Yeah, as far as the maintenance on it, there's not much in the training aspect of it as it is in the new design. It would have to go back out to an engineering and be redesigned, and those designs sent to the manufacturer, and then we get those designs back for approval and make sure that the specs and everything, the new buildings, the new switchgear, whether it's Allen Bradley or Schweitzer or whatever is built, that they meet the new engineering design. So right now, what we're buying has already been engineered from the previous project of the AWPF.
So we are avoiding potentially modest to significant engineering cost.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Sure. Did you have something on this point?
No, go ahead.
Okay.
Please.
So there was two other things I wanted to mention. One is this is not the last time you're going to see us on this particular item. This is the equipment that shows up. This is the switchgear. We're going to come back at you with, we're going to have a pad, conduits, pull boxes that we're going to have a contractor do. So that'll be in addition to this cost. I just want everyone to understand that. We do want to have it, that pad and everything engineered, so the cutover is going to be easy for Daryl and his crews. The second thing is 82 weeks, really long time, makes me a little bit nervous. There was an option, I think I brought it up to Recycled Water Committee, there was an option for 55 weeks, but it was another $740,000 or something like that. So we did not put that option down, with the thinking that if the existing one failed, that 700 and some odd $1,000 could pay for a lot of generator rental and diesel fuel. And without that, Daryl has assured us that he's going to increase the maintenance on what is out there and hopefully just try to duct tape and cable tie it and get it done for 82 weeks, make it work for 82 weeks.
You had your hand up first. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going, but that's the importance of buying switch gear that you guys are already comfortable with, where you could just plug it in and not change the surrounding mechanism surrounding it.
Yeah.
And so, but I'm just saying, it's in the staff report, but I think it should have been highlighted
More.
why it was non-competitive, because you're just taking out something you're comfortable with, replacing it with something you're comfortable with.
Yes.
And you can save money by doing something different, but, well, I don't think you save money.
Yeah, and we will definitely highlight that more in the future.
All right, Luke?
Thank you, Chair. I think I had the same reaction, just initially at a first blush, the lack of a competitive bid kind of raises an eyebrow. But it sounds like this cooperative purchasing, which I have no experience with, does sound like it could be a best practice. But what concerns me a little bit is maybe how quickly this gear failed initially. So how long was it in service before it did fail?
3 years.
3 years? And 21 kV, does that mean it's operating at 21,000 volts?
Yes.
Okay, so it is an impressive switching equipment, but I guess if you're going to be using the same manufacturer and you had a problem, I mean, the mean time between failures on this equipment, did we exceed it? Did we fall short?
We fell well short.
So-
I mean, you would not expect, so what it was,
Yeah.
to get into the details, a transformer shorted
Mm.
and blew up. One would not expect that to happen after 3 years. One would not expect that to happen after, I don't know, 10, 15, 30 years. Yeah. So this is an unusual circumstance, hence the reason, I think as Tammy mentioned, yes, we're buying this, we're going to replace it. We need to keep producing water, but we've retained BB&K. Well, we already retained them, but they're helping us out on the forensic side of things, going, what occurred? And can we recover costs within our insurance, or is there a latent defect clause that we can claw back to the contractor or the original supplier? So there's a lot of undercurrents happening and trying to investigate it, because you're right, this is unusual. I've never seen, I don't know if you've probably seen a lot more than I have, but I have never seen a failure like this in this short a time.
Yeah.
I've seen stuff, electrical systems blow up after 20, 30, 40 years, but not 3.
Yeah, well, that's, so if you're replacing it in kind and you did have a failure that, was far less than it should have been as far as time and service. But you're saying there was a downstream transformer or something that shorted that caused the switchgear to blow?
It was actually a transformer within the switchgear.
Okay.
That was a step down transformer from the 21 kV to allow for lighting and things like that. So it was,
Well, I guess the upside on this is, the silver lining is that there's potentially some money you can claw back for equipment failure based on manufacturing.
we hope so. And that's certainly what we're working towards. And hence the reason we spent the money on a comprehensive evaluation from an electrical engineer.
Okay, any other questions? I can't remember where we were. Did we go out to public comment? No, we haven't. Let's go out to public comment.
Don't
All right.
see any public comment at this. time.
Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the board for a motion.
Motion, I'll move to spend 2 million on a switch gear.
I'll second to spend 2 million.
Okay, any other discussion?
I just have a quick question, Daryl. Does it manufacturer, do they offer extended warranties or
Yes,
plans that you could,
yes. So when you install a switchgear and you do the commissioning and setup with Eaton, they offer an additional year of warranty for free. That goes along with the purchase, and then you can also buy additional warranties after that if you want to. I don't know, I'm not sure what that additional fee is, but you can buy additional warranties.
So we get 1 year when we buy it. When they commission it, you get an extra year. So that's 2 years, and it failed in 3. But we can certainly look at additional warranties if you would like.
Yeah.
No, I was just gonna say the staff report were 2 million plus, just,
Clarification.
yeah, I mean, you don't want to,
Short them.
And the 5 cents at the end of it too.
And the 5 cents.
you don't want to blow a fuse.
So do we have the motion maker and seconded agree with the clarification? Okay.
For $2,229,485.05.
Second.
Not to exceed.
All right, roll call vote, please.
Veranda,
yes.
Castroville,
Yes.
County of Monterey,
Yes.
Del Rio,
Aye.
Marina,
Yes.
Monterey,
Yes.
Pacific Grove,
Yes.
Salinas,
Yeah.
Seaside.
Aye.
Motion
Thank you.
carries. 9 yes, 1 absent.
All right, Dave, we have you up again. Informational items, Pure Water Monterey update.
Pure Water Monterey, the original water making facilities operating steady and reliably. As far as the expansion goes, this is a big week. So tomorrow we open construction bids for injection wells phase 4, and on Thursday for the AWPF expansion. So we'll know what it's going to cost us, and we're seeing a lot of bidder activity, but we hope it's very competitive. Then we'll begin the process of verifying that the bidders, the low bidder especially, is responsive. That's close to 20 different forms and certifications the bidder has to submit. And so we'll be going through that process. By the time the Recycled Water Committee comes around, hopefully we'll have a recommendation with the goal of at the July full board, we'll be able to recommend or award 2 low bids that are responsive. And maybe to close with a very positive note, we wanted to shout out to the city of Seaside, who helped process the right of entry form that allows us access to construct, test, and operate the new injection well phase 4 facilities. Of course, that's just a placeholder. The city's Department of Public Works is doing a second appraisal. There'll be negotiations, and the permanent easements will come along at a later board meeting for your consideration.
Any questions for Dave? Going once, going twice.
How much water, Dave, have we put into the Seaside Basin now?
To date, about 11,200 acre feet since inception.
Thank you. Excellent work.
Yeah.
Any other questions? All right, let's go on to item number 13, staff reports.
So just a couple quick things, and then I'll kick it out to other staff. One is, I think you all got an email, but you probably saw it coming up. We had a little bit of water damage this last week, so there'll be some construction happening up here. Faucet was left on over a weekend, we think by someone, and it's going to be torn up for a little bit and going in the future in terms of new flooring, baseboards, things like that. The last week we've just had fans and dryers going on, so apologize for any inconvenience there. Also, one of our local assembly members, Robert Rivas, is getting sworn in as speaker next week. It's a fairly significant event. So Mike is, oh my gosh, it's this week.
Friday afternoon.
Yes, it is Friday. You going up there?
Yes, sir.
Excellent. So Mike is going up there as well. Just Assemblyman Rivas has been, very helpful to us and a good partner in everything we're doing. And with that, Tammy?
Yes, I would like to announce with great pride that Joanne Lay is been promoted, and she is going to be part of the executive team out at Coachella Valley Water District. She will be their Director of Environmental Services. They get water from the Colorado River, the State Water Project, and wells. Basically, it's a very similar facility agency like ourselves, with the exception of it's about 5 times larger. So this is her last week. She has done an extreme job in the last 2 years that she's been here. Of course, we've all been with this ordinance for the last 1.5 years. And so it had its first reading tonight. And she has improved and done SOPs for the lab and improved operations there. And proud, sorry to see her go and leave the Monterey One Water team, but she's going down to Southern California and purchasing a house and living the dream, being close to her family. So with that, Joanne, thanks for all your time here at Monterey One Water.
Woo! Speech. you on the spot or anything.
Yeah, that didn't do
Not
that.
at all. Thank you, Tammy. I'm thankful for the opportunity to be on the team to serve the community. And I'm very thankful for your support for items like the ordinance update, not only to protect our infrastructure, water quality for our residents and the environment, but to basically protect our system for reliability. So continuous improvement is what we go by here at Monterey One Water. So I'm very proud to be part of the team, and I'm very honored to be here these last 2 years. So
Yeah, but you're leaving.
I'm coming back.
I was just saying, if we knew you were leaving before we
The
approved it,
ordinance.
maybe that would have changed things.
Right.
No, seriously, you've been super wonderful to work with, and just always a light in the room, and very knowledgeable and a professional. So it's a bittersweet moment because obviously really happy for you as you transition, but we're going to lose you, and it's unfortunate for us. So wishing you all the best as you transition on, and hope you come back and visit us.
I will, for sure.
Okay, you heard it here first.
Mike, Fred, do you guys have?
Yeah, she'll be here in the summer. I don't think she'll ever see 60 degrees again down there. I just want to give a verbal update real quick on the proposed tax billing change, the outreach efforts. To date, we have gone to the Marina City Council, Seaside City Council, Monterey City Council, Castroville Community Services District, Pacific Grove, Sand City. We've been to each one of those meetings. We have Delray Oaks tomorrow night, and then we have Marina Coast on July 17th, and we're pending the meeting with Salinas when their summer schedule gets ready to go. With that, we have 4 community forums planned, and to educate our customers about the proposed billing change, we'll have one in English and Spanish that will be in Marina, and then we'll have one in English and Spanish that will be hosted in Salinas. Throughout these next coming weeks, we'll be focusing our opportunities on these outreach efforts. Each one of our customers will be mailed an invite along with advertising in print and digital mediums. And we're also reaching out to some of our member entities like the City of Salinas for additional insight on how to preferred advertising outlets that will help reach those customers. We will also be preparing a toolkit to give to our member entities to help them push that information through their channels to reach the residents. And then the final update is that we have a dynamic frequently asked questions document on our website. And based on some of the recent input that we've gotten, we'll be addressing some of these additional questions that we've received. And I'll just kind of highlight some of the questions. And then, once we'll update the FAQ. But some of the questions were like, how will I know the fee on my property tax bill is correct? I have multiple commercial units on my property. How will I know what to charge each tenant? If my property becomes vacant or new business comes in, how do I address that with the property tax bill? And then my current fee, my wastewater fees are being paid through my HOA. And will that continue if it goes to the property bill? So we'll be answering all those questions in the upcoming FAQ update. That's what I have.
Good.
Just a quick, through the chair, just a quick suggestion, perhaps having 2 in Salinas, 1 in English and South Salinas, 1 in Spanish and East Salinas. And we have several community, the Cesar Chavez Library is in the heart of East Salinas, Bread Box. We could certainly host it at the police station community room, somewhere at City Hall. Plenty of opportunities there, but just because it's 22 square miles, just making sure that we're reaching all ends of the city. Thanks.
Thank you for bringing that up, because I did want to clarify, it's not just 2 forums, it's 4 forums, 1 in English and 1 in Spanish in each of those locations.
Right.
So we're
so it'll be Spanish only. It won't be translation services. It will be provided in Spanish in each location.
And I would assume at nighttime, correct?
Correct. It will be after work hours, 6 o'clock.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah.
And I failed to mention one other thing in my update. So Mayor Craig, you asked about the Monterey County and some of the updates in regards to the property tax. So we have that as well. And we understand that County Council has reviewed the potential contract with Easy Smart Pay. And they have sent that contract back to Easy Smart Pay. And so now there'll be a little bit of back and forth before it comes to the Board of Supervisors for potentially approval down in the next 6-8 weeks. Whatever happens with.
Could the
with
supervisor answer when it's gonna come?
What's the day?
Just wondering if you get a projection sheet, you might be able to know off the cuff.
They don't pass that information on to me.
Susan Scavone, I just hope you heard that because that's what her question was during
Yeah.
public comments. So
Yeah.
She's on
Okay,
there.
no, I'm not gonna concern this. No, I had the same concerns. I don't know if one outreach communique on the peninsula in Marina does anything for my citizens and the ratepayers in my city, and I'm sure the other communities. This is such a drastic change, not a difficult change for you guys, but it's something new for the ratepayers. I think a little bit more outreach is called for. So I would ask the board to figure out a way to have one in the city of Seaside. And I'll let the other cities speak for themselves, but.
could I offer, because I also want to be mindful of staff capacity too. So could I offer that it was brought up on the Salinas one, maybe having one in one side of the city and one in the other. So maybe on the peninsula, we have one in Marina and one maybe in Seaside, just to kind of help distribute it a little bit. And we can stick with the 4 somehow.
So to clarify, one in English and one in Spanish, and okay that those locations are in different cities.
Yes.
No, he got that.
Tell it like it is.
Well, I mean, if it's staff capacity or it's a little bit of money, Seaside would, I think we'd be willing to pick up the cost for the translation. So it's only one meeting in Seaside, in English, but we'll pay for the translation, but you're doing one in English, one in Spanish for a reason. So I don't know if translation makes it easier or not, but my point is one on the peninsula doesn't make a lot of sense to me. So I just pushed that to the board. I mean, that's something for you guys.
We will certainly look into that and talk more to the board. At this point, the 4 that Rachel stated are in July and August. 1 English, 1 Spanish in Salinas, 1 English, 1 Spanish on the peninsula in Marina, but we'll talk to the board more about additional, like you said, broadening the geography.
Yeah, and I would just say, as we try to create that partnership, especially with the city of Seaside, as we talk about easements, then.
To back you up, if I may, through the
Yeah,
chair.
this is the last one, and then I want to make sure we go on because it's supposed to be more reports.
Understood. Well, but in terms of community outreach, like you want to do the work on the front end with the constituents and you want to make sure, like, I'd rather have 12 meetings on the front end than the uproar on the back end. And being able to say, we've been in North County, we've been in Seaside, we've been in Monterey, we've been in Marina, we've been over in Salinas twice. I understand staff time may be difficult to do, but like that's what you do so that you get the buy-in from your ratepayers. So I'm certainly supportive of that. And I think, the direction that Paul said he would look into, perhaps expanding that out, I think is fine. That's my belief. Like, and I've seen it in our city where, you do more on the front end, you get better buy-in on it.
And just for clarification, I was restricting Paul because this has not been agendized for action relative to this. So he's taking your input and you bring it back.
I'm just giving you my unsolicited opinion.
All right, so let's bring it to the board for comments or reports. Anybody on the right? Anybody on the left and online? Oh, Chair Moore.
Yes, so first off, to Joanne Lay, congratulations on the promotion and being able to move closer to family. We do very much appreciate the contributions you've made to us, particularly since they deal with critical issues of keeping our product water safe and keeping our National Marine Sanctuary safe. So thank you very much for that. And we certainly wish you the best of promotion and progress down south. We will miss you. And then secondly, my apologies to Director Church for targeting him and putting the spotlight on him with respect to liens, but hey, you got targeted a couple of times tonight, so I guess you're used to it. Thank you.
All righty, and with that, we'll go ahead and adjourn, and our next regular board meeting is July 31st. Have a good night, everybody.
Thank you.
July 31st. Oh, yeah.